Okay, we'll go ahead and get started today. Thank you all for being here. It looks like we have pretty decent attendance. What we're going to talk about today is 6 steps to a worry-free Service Manager 2016 migration. So obviously Microsoft announced System Center 2016 release here at Ignite. Service Manager was not included in the initial release, but it will of course be coming in the not too distant future. So we'll have Service Manager 2016 on our plates in the very near future. And so today we're going to look at the Technical Preview 5 release is what I'll be using. We'll be doing a demo at one point here. We'll go through the agenda and we'll show just a brief example of some migration principles, what we need to do. So my name is Seth Cousins. I'm the General Manager for Services here at Cireson. My contact information is here on the screen. If anybody has any questions or comments following this, they can please reach out to me and we can figure out what you need and help you out. We'll go ahead and move forward with this. So let's get some stuff out of the way, a little bit of housekeeping. First things first, the webinar agenda for today. So announcements, and then we'll be discussing briefly what's new in Service Manager 2016. It'll be a real brief outline. There is a whole bunch of changes, but most of them are under the covers and have to do more with the programming and improvement and performance. But then we'll talk about why you want to migrate versus upgrade. We'll also discuss the 6 primary steps to migration, along with some really base estimates on the amount of time that it would take in, say, the average Service Manager environment. And then we'll talk about Cireson's migration services. We'll also talk about the Service Manager lifecycle, what that is and why you should care. And then we'll talk about Cireson's new Lifecycle Management application. And then what's next, upcoming on the roadmap. That'll be a real brief discussion. We're looking just really out to the end of the year at this point. We have not yet released our 2017 roadmap. And then open forum for question and answers. So as far as announcements, in case you haven't heard, Cireson is awarded to the Inc. 5000, which is awesome for us. It's really big news. We are the 167th fastest growing company in the US. We made it into the 500 placement, and we're number 10 for software companies and number 6 in the top at San Diego companies, which is really awesome. We're super proud of that, and we look forward to keeping that going. And really that's thanks to everybody out there on this webinar today that is using Service Manager, looking at using Service Manager, already using our products, looking at our products, and we thank you for that. We made it into the San Diego Business Journal, 13 fastest growing companies, San Diego. We also made it into the CIO Review and the 20 most promising enterprise asset management companies, and we just recently completed our Microsoft SAM Gold competency. So that's something we've been working in for a long time, but we just decided to go make it a little bit more formal. So took care of that just recently. We've also released the Service Portal Community Edition. So we now have a self-service portal, which is now free to the community. So just as you have Microsoft's out-of-the-box portal, Cireson has released a self-service portal that's free. We have some additional features over the top of what Microsoft offers today, and that has to do with our integrated HTML knowledge base. So we do rich text formatting rather than, replaces the rich text formatting that Microsoft does. We do HTML-based formatting, and so we've actually given you the ability to create, edit, and search HTML knowledge articles all right there within the web browser, no download required. If you're actually using Service Manager KBs out of the box today, you know how big of a pain it is to click a KB and then have to download it, and both the security concerns there and the users not understanding what's going on. And so we've got an HTML knowledge base that gets rid of all those issues. We also have out-of-the-box dashboards. Those are included with the free version as well. And then we have the adaptive display, which allows you to pick it up on a mobile, take a look at it on a mobile, an iPad, or on the web via a web browser on a computer as well. So we adapt to each of those environments. And then we have a few other popular features. As mentioned, 100% browsable, customizable portal themes. We have a new portal themer coming out, which allows very easy customization of the colors across the entire portal, providing a nice layered theme that really brings it all together. And then we, of course, have some fast response times. This has to do with some of our proprietary caching technology and our own personal database that we've created that doesn't rely on the System Center Service Manager database during the actual, when you're making calls to the web interface. So it actually gives us the ability to respond faster than what you get out of the SDK and the out-of-the-box portal. That has to do, all that ties into our modern architecture. And then we do support Windows Integrated Authentication as well as Forms Authentication, and we have announcements tied in directly into the portal itself. So now let's talk about what's new in Service Manager 2016. So I'm really just picking out a few of my favorite pieces. There's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes here to bring a lot of changes to Service Manager. From the end user perspective and really from a basic administrator's perspective, you're not going to see a lot visually, but you'll see it more in terms of performance. So talking about performance, work item creation and update has been improved dramatically. So the speed at which a work item can be updated and saved or created and saved is seen some dramatic improvements. The workflow processing, the workflow engine in general has seen a lot of improvements, and this goes through all aspects of workflows within Service Manager. So just about anything that happens behind the scenes has been improved and sped up. So you should see some nice gains in that area as well, and that's something that's going to affect most everything you do in Service Manager. The increased work item per second capacity is improved. This is going to be for larger companies, or if you're using a lot of automated work item creation, maybe doing batch creation, things along those lines. They've improved the ability to add work items in batches, a pretty nice improvement. So if you're creating thousands of work items a day, you can see some good performance gains here as well. A number of you out there are using grouped and queue calculations. So you're basically defining your groups, you're defining your queues to keep certain groups from being able to see certain items, or even just so that you can separate those items based on certain criteria. And they've done a lot to improve the calculation of that, so that'll speed up the system in general. So if you're using a lot of groups and queues, you'll see a good performance improvement here. And that's usually a big burden as far as performance is concerned, and so it's nice to see some improvements there. And then the other thing is console performance. They've actually gone through and updated the console. They support .NET 4 now. You're going to see just improvements in terms of general use, opening, closing, loading, opening work items, large numbers of work items, all that. The console is known for being a bit clunky, and they've done a good job of improving the stability and some of the performance there as well. Data warehouse. The really big thing on the data warehouse is lots of little things behind the scenes that really won't affect you on a day-to-day basis, but the big thing is they've added date dimensions. So with the finally adding date dimensions to the data warehouse, you can now add those in your cubes, and those cubes can then be broken out by date instead of having to kind of fake that or add it through a customization. It's all included now. So now you can lay out the number of work items across a date range. You can see when things have changed and what's happened in a lot easier fashion right there from within the cubes, rather than having to do custom reports like we had to do previously. They've updated their out-of-the-box portal to HTML5. Not going to talk about this too much because ours is better, and ours is free now too. So why would you use theirs? I don't know. Connector performance, they've improved the AD connector and configuration manager connector speeds dramatically. So you can see in some cases as much as 2 to 20 times improvement. It really just depends. Each iteration has seen some improvement, so I'm not sure what they're saying the overall performance improvement is now, but both of those run considerably faster than they used to. So that's great, because those have been points of contention in the past for us, especially in larger environments where you have a lot more either configuration items or users. So, and then there's a number of other things. You can go to Microsoft's website, of course, and do a search for Service Manager 2016 changes, and they have a whole list of changes through each of the technical previews. They break it down that way. So why migrate? So we're going to call this a fresh start. Let's look at some of the advantages of migrating rather than upgrading. So when you upgrade an environment, you obviously take the environment you have today, and you're going to upgrade everything that exists in there. So one of the things that you get is you get a lot of the garbage that was there previously. And so we want to get rid of a lot of that. We don't want to have to worry about it. So what we're going to do instead is look at migrating. So migrating, there's a number of examples and things that are going to improve, but we're going to list a number of them here. So I've got 7 examples of why you'd want to migrate versus upgrade. So the first one is improved performance. Usually when you do a migration, you're only going to take your active work items, and the reason for that is because those are the ones that are still relevant and being worked. If you needed to keep a long history of information, then what you could do is you could keep your old environment up, but keep it in a read-only sort of basis just for reporting purposes. But what you'd do is migrate your active work items into the new environment, so you'd migrate those over. And that's going to dramatically increase your overall database performance because it's going to drop your database size considerably. So by doing that, keeping only the configuration items that exist and are still active in the database, a lot of those things you're going to see a big performance improvement from that, not to mention the performance improvement that you see from an upgrade. Can make Service Manager actually nice to use, which is great. During this process, you also have the opportunity of upgrading your operating system and database software. So instead of sitting on top or trying to add in software, an OS upgrade to this mix, instead we can build a new OS, which is a nice clean server, new operating system, all the updates, everything ready to go, do the installation of 2016 on that operating system, on that SQL server, and have everything set and clean. And then we can do the actual migration. And so you're going to get a lot of changes. You're going to start with a new, fresh environment, and your users and everybody's going to appreciate that a lot more. One of the things is you also get the ability to set up the new environment using the lessons you've learned over the last number of years. I imagine a number of you have either been out there doing this for a long time, or some of you are new to Service Manager. In my particular case, a number of years ago, when I did my first Service Manager implementation for the company I was working for at the time, I did it myself. I wasn't a Service Manager admin. I learned it as I went, and the environment got built while I was learning. And so, obviously, I know considerable amounts more nowadays, and most of you probably do too from the time you implemented it. And being able to put those into play in a new environment, their configuration you've learned, all those things that you've learned through the years, being able to put them into play in a new environment is going to provide you with a lot of benefits as you move forward. Let's look at processes. So legacy processes. So we can streamline a lot of the processes that exist today. A lot of us have older processes that we won't even really use so much anymore. And what this does is provides us with the capability of breaking those processes out and putting new processes into place. So there's a lot of advantages to that, and so that's something that migrating gives us the ability to do. If you are several versions behind, it's going to require a number of upgrades, whereas you could actually just do a single migration. So some people out there are still in 2010, believe it or not. So this would provide the ability to jump through the 2012 series and jump all the way into 2016. Some people are on the very base version of 2012, not even Service Pack 1, not even R2. And so this would give the ability for those people to jump straight to 2016, new environment and everything. In a virtualized environment, jumping to new servers gives you the ability to reclaim a lot of lost storage. As your storage expands and contracts, this gives you the ability to kind of reclaim that space once you dump those drives. And if you're using a virtualized infrastructure, dynamic hard drives where they're expanding to fill the space as needed and they're not actually using as much space up front, this gives you the ability to reclaim some of that and allow the environment to grow a little bit more, give you a little breathing room. And then knowledge articles, work items, configuration items that are no longer relevant can be removed. And so even your knowledge base will seem more accurate. You won't have a lot of users searching through all those old knowledge articles that are unrelated, that have maybe been archived or at the very least marked as deprecated. You can get rid of those altogether so that when users are searching or even analysts are searching, they don't run into problems finding old articles. So let's talk about our 6 steps to a worry-free migration. It's obviously just an overlay. It's an outline, really. So when we look at a migration, if you break it down into 6 steps, would consist of something like this. So first, we're going to set up a fresh Service Manager 2016 environment. I'm just giving you some rough hourly estimates, and this is in general for an average size environment, how long it might take. A new setup of Service Manager 2016, to set the environment up, it really doesn't take too long. So we're looking at maybe 4 hours. That includes the installation of both the management servers, the data warehouse, and the Cireson portal. So we can do about all that within about 4 hours, which is not too bad. But that's, of course, a base vanilla installation, doesn't include your configuration. So your next step is then to configure the new environment. So some of the configuration would carry over. Things like enumeration lists, bringing your AD users in, all that sort of stuff needs to be configured, set up, and setting your desired properties. So if you look at that, you're probably looking at about another 16 hours. So we're about 20 hours to set up a new Service Manager 2016 environment. And then during a migration, we'll back up your existing environment. Obviously, we don't want to run into any issues or anything that we'd have problems with. And then we need to migrate the active work items, configuration items, management pack, DLLs, any sort of customizations you have in the environment. And that can take a considerable amount of time. We do actually have both the experience and tools on our side, and we're going to make one of those tools available to the public, not as a freebie, but as a purchasable long-term lifecycle management solution, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's our lifecycle tool. And if you use that tool, which I'll show you today in a demo, it's going to take considerably less time. And I'll show you exactly why when we do that demo. Just do a small number of work items, but it'll give you a good sense of why it saves you so much time and effort. If you were to do it all manually and have to migrate the different sets of work items and pull out the ones that are active and write the code yourself and then test the code and then make sure it got everything and then all those, it could take between 40 and 8 hours, and really that depends on the size of the environment itself. We have some large customers out there, and without some form of automation, it's going to take them a long time to get what they really need out of that environment. This tool will help a lot. Next, once we have all of our new data over in the new environment, or the old data, I guess, in the new environment, we're going to need to do some tests to verify both the data integrity, to make sure we have what we want over there, to make sure everything's working well, that it can be accessed from the different locations. Depends on what your structure looks like, of course. In a lot of cases, some people have a more advanced structure with external access available, multiple domains, things like that. Obviously, that's going to take more hours. But for a general, regular, average to small size environment, it shouldn't take more than 8 hours of testing to see that everything's working, the data's there, searches work, data gets pulled up, items that were related to each other are still related to each other, those sorts of things. The next step and final step is to migrate again any work items that have been created in the old environment to the new environment during the period of time of testing and migration. So obviously you can't just shut down your environment for a couple days while you make sure this is all going the way you want it to after the migration occurred. So you need to have your existing environment up and running. Well, then we need to migrate any new work items that happened or any new changes from your existing environment into the new environment prior to the cutover. So this reduces your downtime considerably for that. So, migration services. Cireson's service team here to help. So obviously this is my team that we're talking about here today. And we've got a number of consultants, and they've been doing this for a long time. So these guys are some of the best in the industry. They know Service Manager, they know System Center, and they do this sort of thing all the time. So we've done migrations from 2010 to 2012, from 2012 to 2012 R2. It just depends on what you're trying to do. We've done dev to test migrations, test to production. That's something we'll talk about today during the life cycle portion. So this is something we have a lot of experience with, and we'd love to help you guys out. If you join our community, which we'll talk about later as well, it's a great place to come and ask questions and just kind of get some expert feedback on the things that you're looking at doing or the things you're working on or the troubles you're having. And we also have developed a pretty strong community, so a lot of community members themselves do a great job of communicating back and helping other Service Manager users out. So we offer upgrade services if you want to just do an upgrade and you don't want to go through the migration process, so you have a newer environment. You won't see a lot of the advantages that we discussed in terms of a migration. Maybe you have a smaller environment and it just doesn't make too much sense for you because it's not going to take too much time. We can do upgrades. We do migration services as well, which we've already discussed. And then we also do pre and post migration health checks. So we can come in and do a 1 to 2 day health check for you on your environment prior to the upgrade or to the migration. And then we can do another one after the migration or upgrade. And if you want to do the work yourself to do that, it's a great way to have some expert advice prior to your during the work, and also to verify that everything is the way and working as you would expect after the upgrade or migration. So if you're looking to do a lot of the work yourselves, we can still come in and help you out on the front or back end of that as well. Why do you need our help? So this is the suggestions of why I think you should have us step in and help with your migration process. Basically, this is what we do day in and day out. Every day we're working with Service Manager, customizing it, installing it, configuring it, migrating it, upgrading it. It's what we do every day. And for most of you, you have 1,000 things to do. It's not what you do every day. It's just a small portion of what you do every day. So there's no way that you can expect to have the same level of experience or know, when you run into a problem, how to deal with that. So we have the tools to get it done quickly, accurately, and lower cost than other firms. And I think we've talked a little bit about why that is today. And we're going to look at one of the tools that really streamlines this process. And I don't know of anybody else that has a tool like it. So if there is, well, then I go find them if they're cheaper. But for us, it's a great tool, brand new, designed for this exact purpose. I just don't think there's anything else out there like that. And then if you are like most administrators, or like the administrator that I was prior to being at Cireson a number of years ago, then you have a million other things you could also be doing. This is probably just one of 10 different jobs, maybe more, that you're doing on a daily basis. And why even try and do it right when you can just have us come in and help you guys out? I mean, this is what we do. So don't spend all the time, pain, and energy to learn the pitfalls of a migration or even an upgrade when you probably won't be doing it again for at least 3 to 6 years. Let us come in. We already know those things. We'll come in and do it for you, and then you can get on to using it and making your users' lives better rather than making yours worse. So, like our buddy over there says, I have better things to do, like talking about having better things to do. So it's better than migrating. All right, Service Manager Lifecycle. So what is the lifecycle? Basically, the idea here is that we're supporting change management. So when we look at a Service Manager lifecycle, it's really the idea of a development, test, and production environment, and making changes in one and migrating them through to the other. A lot of smaller implementations are going to have maybe a dev environment and then a production environment, and that's fine. A lot of environments today, though, have just a production environment. A lot of people are doing tests in production, doing dev in production, and that's simply because Service Manager does not have a great option for moving any of your changes from dev to production. If you put something in dev, you put in a new MP, you put in those things, you have to really outline what all was done, what was changed, the DLLs that were put in place, the management packs that were installed, what version of management pack you're on, and you have to migrate all that information forward. And you have to do it in a completely manual process. So what we're proposing is that you don't do that. Instead, you use the new Lifecycle Migration tool. And the Lifecycle Migration tool will help you to push those changes forward automatically. All you do is load it up and run it, and it'll grab the latest DLLs, it'll grab the latest management packs, it'll grab any of the work items, configuration items, any of those things that you've created that you want to bring forward, which we'll look at in a little bit. It can grab those things and it can copy them forward for you. So copying work items, copying settings, MPs, all that stuff is included in this, has the capability to do so. You can choose the target machines, the source machines. You can easily decide if you want to move from dev to test and test to production, or dev to production, or however that works with you. So with that in mind, the solution is called the Cireson Lifecycle Management App. And the Cireson Lifecycle Management App, there's a brief screenshot right here of what it will look like when it's released. Right now we're in test versions. We released for partners and such to have a preview release, but we do not have a final customer release just yet. I have a question in terms of licensing and what will be included and what will not. I can't answer the licensing question today simply because it has not been released yet, but that will be available on our website through your sales rep. And to understand exactly where that will sit inside the grand scheme of Cireson licensing, and why you would want to pay for it, why you won't pay for it long term. I mean, some of that stuff we'll discuss here in just a second. So looking at the screenshot here on the right, you can see some of the stuff that it will migrate. Work items, configuration items, management packs, files, templates, that includes DLLs. The SCSM settings items, it will actually copy over the settings if you desired it to. So migration options, there's various options in there. We'll look at some of those, and then of course you can log all of it out to a temp directory. So Cireson Lifecycle Management App. I discussed a little bit around what this does, but let's talk about what it does from a marketing perspective. So helping you easily move from A, B, C, and back again. So a little slogan there for you. I made that up myself. So what does it do? Export an entire environment and ensure only the necessary management packs are copied using intelligent comparison, dependency checking, and targeted exclusions. You can snapshot or cold replica your current known configuration environment to promote consistency and standardization. So the idea there is that you could take your existing environment today and take a snapshot of it with external tools and put it into place as a dev or test, and then you can copy one environment between the other. So if you set up 2 service manager environments from scratch, you can then migrate your production into test today. So say you migrate to 2016. Now you don't have a test today, you want a test. So you build a test environment. Now what we do is we use the migration to the Lifecycle Management App to copy all of that data, information, configuration, all that stuff into this test environment. So now you have a near clone or near replica of your existing production environment ready to go for you to start testing, deving in, and then copying from there. You can go back. You can bring your new changes back into your production environment. It will copy relationships. It will copy work items. It does configuration items. It'll even do runbooks, and it'll even keep the runbook IDs and enumerations. So if you have a set runbook, the runbook ID is ultimately important. It will keep that information and push it forward. So we also have automatically relate migrated service offerings and request offerings. So it'll do service and request offerings as well. So that way when you build new and test new request and service offerings inside the portal, inside your dev, once they're working and up and going, you can migrate them into your production environment. Copies service level objectives. As mentioned, it'll do DLLs and management packs, and then it helps you easily maintain that separate development environment. So you don't need to do the database restorations or move production resources and some of that stuff. that you have to do today if you're looking to do that. Microsoft's recommendation for how to set up a dev environment is crazy. So, I mean, you can get it to work, though a lot of people don't, and we just don't even attempt it usually. So this actually helps with that process and streamlines it quite a bit. So let's look at our demo today. I'll answer some of the questions and stuff I have up here once we get through the demo and stuff. So let's bring the demo up. What I'm going to show you guys today in the demo is I'm going to show you a migration from a 2012 environment that has been set up in my lab to another 2016 environment that's been set up in my lab. So we'll be migrating. Really, I'm just going to focus on incidents and such. Just give you an example of some of the stuff you can bring over. We'll also be doing some configuration items and showing how those configuration items relate and stuff. So pretty simple example, but should give you a good idea of how it works and why it's great. So what I have here is my two lab environments. So I've got my dev environment here, and I've got my production 2016 environment here. So if we bring up our console here, let's go to our dev environment, and we'll bring up the incidents. All right, so you can see here on the dev instance, or we'll call them both production here for the sake of the demo. So in my existing production, my 2012 production environment, I have around 200 different incidents. In my new environment, I've only got 20 incidents here. So what we're going to be looking at is the migration of these and configuration items. So let's take a quick look at configuration items. So in my existing environment, we'll look at Windows computers. I've got my brand new environment, I've got about 8 machines there. With this environment here, I've built some dummy data in, so I've got around 101 different machines here. So what we want is we want to migrate those incidents, and we want to migrate those computers into there. But just to trick it up a little bit or trip it up the system and make it a little more difficult, we're also going to look at what we have installed here. So if I look in my settings, I've got some Cireson applications installed in both environments. So in this environment, I have group assign, portal, console, and that's about it, survey as well. In the old environment, I have notify analyst, I have view builder, I have my work items, I have asset management settings. All that stuff is built into here. And I don't have any of that in this particular one, as you can see. So what we want to do is we want to use the migration tool Lifecycle app to bring that over as well into this environment. So we want to bring those DLLs and those MPs over also. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Lifecycle Management app here. All right, so a new GUI interface will be put on top of this. It's not ready just yet. They're still working out a few of the kinks, so that's coming soon. I think over the next 2 weeks we'll basically have that ready, and then it should be ready for a targeted release. Like I said, right now this is a preview version, so it's not as pretty as it will be for those of you that like pretty things like myself. This is more of an engineer's perspective, if you will. So we're looking at localhost, which in this case will be my current environment, and then we want to look at our target environment. So our target environment server is going to be SCSM01. We want to copy work items over. We also want to copy configuration items. We also want to copy MPs. I'm not going to copy SCSM settings simply because I do have 2 different environments here. It's not a true migration. If an extended class field does not exist on target server, we're not going to throw excuse me, we're not going to throw an error because we don't care about that in this example, but you can have it stop if an extension wasn't applied or you had an issue, and it won't dump the data that way. So that way you make sure you fill in those extended fields. We're going to run it multi-threaded, use smart type projections to find the related objects. So it's going to find the largest type projection available for related objects. And enumeration value options, So basically, this gives you the option to create a new management pack with the enumerations from the existing environment in the new environment. So that way, your enumerations do get copied over, but they don't get copied over the top of existing management packs. So we'll go ahead and let that happen. Going to our work item options, I don't want to do change requests today. I don't want to do any of that. I'm just going to copy incidents. So I only want to copy active ones as well. I'm also going to look at copy relationships. So I do want to copy relationships to work items. We'll suppress and log the invalid relationships. If a related object does not exist, we do want to create it. We'll use the custom inherited work item classes of the box, and then we'll copy file attachments, get rid of that. We won't copy any attachments. I don't care about those for today's demo. Speed it up a little bit. And then it says do not copy similar work items that do not exist. So it gives you some information about that. Basically, if they have the same title and created date, then it will ignore them. Configuration items. So I want to copy over the Microsoft Windows computer class. I want to create it recursively. Yes, yes. I do want to update them if they already exist on the server. I don't care about the attachments. Halt when copying an item that already exists on the target server. We don't want to halt. We want to keep going for today's demo. Copy relationships. MP and file options. So here we can choose to copy the DLLs, which we do want to do. We do want to import the sealed and unsealed non-Microsoft management packs. If one of them fails to import, we're going to go ahead and continue today. You may not want to do that in your environment, understandably. We're going to go ahead and continue there. We're going to not do service offering and request offerings just because I haven't set any of those up in either of these two environments, and I don't have any runbooks, so we'll get rid of that too. And then we have a status section here, which we'll be taking a look at. Let me double check my options here. I think that looks like we should be good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start our copy here and see what happens. Connecting to the old server, connecting to the new server. It's verifying that I do want to copy the data. Yes. So it's going to give us a second while it finalizes those connections. It's looking up our management packs, class structure. Okay, so we found 12 sealed management packs, which are valid. It's doing its job here, finding the various management packs, seeing what related management packs it has, what other management packs it might need, exporting the management packs. You can also see that it ignored the group assign and the console app because I actually have the same or newer version on the new environment already. So one of the questions while we're waiting for this to run, does the migration tool do a pre-flight check before actually copying it all over and report what it migrated, what it will migrate? It does not. It doesn't have a what if you will. So it will look at it and it will go through and it will keep track of what it did migrate though. And what it did migrate, you can then just run it again and it will see that it has that version or a newer version already installed. The work item may already exist. Those things may already be there. And if they're already there, then it's going to ignore those anyways. And the next subsequent runs will ignore those things and move on to the other things. So the nice thing about that is if you do have an error in the actual process, because a what if in general doesn't usually, in my experience, really tell you what's going to happen when you actually run it. So this one here, you can run it multiple times, and if you run into an error, you can figure out what the error is, resolve the error, and then rerun it again and move back through it. You don't even have to close the app out to run it again. So you can leave it open and then just run it again, and it will run with the same settings and everything. And if you resolved your error, it will just continue on. So maybe we'll see that today. In my setup for the demonstration yesterday, I did run into a few small errors, and it gave me an opportunity to work those out, and then I was able to migrate back, go back through them and migrate successfully before rolling the environment back. But I rolled the environment back, so I don't know for sure that I got all the little things that were environment related that caused those errors in the first place, since I went back to the environment that had the errors. So we'll see here if it does what it's supposed to do, or if we run into an error and we'll have to figure out what the problem is. And I don't have forever, so that will be fun and exciting for all of you in a live demo. Looks like we are doing pretty good. It's copying the work items now. It's now committing the work items, making the relationships, committing the configuration items. And this is just in my lab. All of this is running on a laptop. I've got 2 labs running on this laptop here. So you can see the speed at which this is working. It shows to the performance of the app and also to the performance of the new 2016 environment as well. I do have a question from Larch McWaters that says, with the Cireson self-service portal being free now, does Cireson revenue focus on annual support costs? There's some ambiguity there. The self-service portal is free. The analyst portal is not free, and neither is the asset management piece. So really the huge benefit in what we have over Microsoft's portal today is the analyst portal, which allows you to actually work incidents from an analyst perspective and do a lot of different things that you can't do in the Microsoft portal. So a lot of our revenue is focused on sales and expansion of that, and then of course the continued maintenance and support of the existing products. And that maintenance, though, includes all the new features that we add, the continuous upgrade cycles, a lot of the stuff that we've always worked towards at Cireson. So really, it's not a big change for us. Not many of our customers were self-service portal-only customers anyway. And we've added so much value to the analyst portion, and that's where the real value lies, that it doesn't change much for us by releasing it for free, which is why we did it. Answering a couple of the questions here. All right, so complete. Wrote 6,104 events to the log file, closed the connections. It's all finished up. Okay, so now the true test. Let's go ahead and close this console over here. Go ahead and refresh our Cireson self-service portal here. And switch the number of items. We'll have to wait for the cache builder to catch up, which should take just a minute or so. Let's take a look here. Okay, so first thing we can see is Notify Analyst. My active work items have all been installed here. We've got View Builder, we've got Asset Management settings. All that stuff's now been installed by the console itself. Let's see if I can One thing is 2016. I just copied over stuff from 2012. Some of the stuff will obviously have to be updated to support some of the changes that occurred with the management packs, the base level management packs in 2016. If you guys aren't aware of that, so some of this stuff won't just work by double clicking on it because there's some very small changes that need to happen. Basically, just a new management pack that's not yet released will be shortly. If you already have that in your environment in 2012 prior to the migration, then you wouldn't see that I just had. But basically all the management packs installed, DLLs would have installed. We can go look at that too. Let's look at our work items. We now have 219 work items. So there was 20 here before, there's 200 in the other. One of the 200 was closed, so it didn't copy that over. So now we have 219 rather than 220. It's exactly as we would expect. I'll go ahead and open one of those up here. You can see that it overlaid the work item numbers too. It does not keep the work item ID. So if that's an issue for you, it's something that has to be discussed, primarily because the work item ID is auto-incremented, and messing with the IDs is generally a terrible idea. So you can see that it has all the information from the work items that were copied over. It even made the relationships to the assigned to user. Those users did not exist in my environment prior. So if we go to our configuration items section, we can look at the computers, all Windows computers. We now have 108 computers. And if we look at users, previously had something like 20 or something, we now have 197. So it copied all that over, made the relationships for us and everything. So getting all that to work, running it on your own, doing it in PowerShell, that's a daunting task. So you can see that all that carried through today. If we go into our Cireson portal here, let's see if it's updated yet. Yep, there we go. So, well, actually, I don't even know if that service was started, so it's not really a fair test. So we can see everything is in there. We're good to go. And that is an example of the Lifecycle Management App, which will be released in the near future from us. So with that in mind, let me go back to this. And I'm going to skip the roadmap, since all it talks about is password reset v3 and asset depreciation. The new roadmap should be coming out soon. Let's talk about the Cireson community real quick. We already talked about most of that. Collaborative forum, hop on in there. Helps you link up with us. I want to get to questions and answers here. And we'll go back to resources. This is just so that they're available to you guys. And there we go. I'll go back to this in a minute. So let's go ahead and I'll go to the questions that we have available here, because I see there are a couple. All right. Can you give it a from date and a to date as it only copies, so that it only copies specific work items? Not as of today. First version will not include that. We have already had partners and customers asking for a filtering option of some sort. So basically the ability to filter the work items that will carry through. So ultimately that doesn't exist today. It won't exist in version 1. Right? Version 1, the only option is all items or only active items in terms of the work items. But in future versions, we are already looking at a filtering option to allow you to pick from a certain date to a certain date. All right. What happened to the active work item IDs after the import to the new system? If there are similar ID in the new system, blah, 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 from old to existing. So what it does is it'll automatically increment. So it looks at and organizes your existing ones in the old system, and then it looks at the ones in the new system. It automatically adds them in as new items starting from there. So the work item ID will change, but the order of your old work item stays the same. So basically they get added in order of work item ID to the new environment, but the work item ID will be incremented based off of what the existing work item ID is today. And the reason for that is that there's no real way to set a specific work item ID without causing problems within Service Manager. If it's a brand new environment and you're copying over all of the data, your work item IDs are going to be really close, but there's basically no guarantee, and it would be near impossible to make it so that every work item ID is the same as they were previously. Basically, they will all adjust by the number difference from the new and the old environment. Look at, is the migrator included in the package that includes software assurance? So software assurance for the migrator will be possible. I don't know what all of the, like I said, I don't know the licensing yet since it hasn't been officially released. The licensing model hasn't been announced, and that's outside of my realm. But I do know that software assurance will be provided or available for the Lifecycle app, and the reason being that we have a lot of plans for it, including in the future taking care of migrations for Portal, the Cireson portal. So we can migrate from one version of Cireson portal to another. We intend to support that at some point in the future. We want to look at your customizations, even bringing forward your customizations from a dev environment to a production environment, so you can do portal customizations and then bring those forward without losing that data. So that's something we're looking at as well. So all that stuff is stuff that would be included under software assurance. And also, I mean, the software assurance, the real point there is to fit the life cycle bill. So the idea is that your life cycle is what goes through this whole thing. So that's the real value of this product, not the migration. The migration is a one-time thing. You can pay us to come in and do it if you want. Or you can pay us for the tool and do it yourself and then have it going forward. But the real value to the Lifecycle app is that ability to go from test to dev and then production, and production back to dev, and really copy that down and really fills a hole that doesn't exist today. So is the data work items transferred to the operational DB, which can get added to the DW via SCSM's natural ETLs? Yes. So all of the data and work items are transferred from the Service Manager primary database, and then they're transferred into the new database via PowerShell and the SDK. So it's all supported methods. And once they're in there, the ETLs for the data warehouse in the new environment will automatically pick those up, and they will all be included and moved into the data warehouse. And there should be no issues there at all. We do a fair amount of reporting off data warehouse. What impact do you suggest have on that setup? We would need to have a separate data warehouse set up to track the historical information and a different one for the new environment. So you have the option of using the existing data warehouse server and even the same reporting server. You could possibly use that as well if you wanted to keep them all in the same reporting server. But yes, what we're looking at is a migration away from that old data. If you're looking at reporting back more time than what's in the data, what's in your Service Manager database today, then you would need to keep that old data warehouse active and running. Now, keep in mind that most Service Manager deployments already keep 365 days of work item data, which means that the Service Manager database itself will have a whole year of data sitting in it still that you're not using that to report off of because it's also in the data warehouse. So what we're doing is we're copying up to that 365 days or however, whatever you've set your retention to, possibly longer, possibly shorter. We'll take all that data and put it in the new environment. And so then you can still, it will migrate into your new data warehouse. So you'll still be able to report off of whatever length of time your retention is in Service Manager. So if you're not looking back an entire year or more, in most cases, it's not going to be an issue for you. Is the tool useful for migrating from 2012 to 2016? Yes, that's exactly what I showed you today. So Maria, that's what I just did, so you can see that it definitely does work for migrating from 2012 to 2016. Is there any migration of data warehouse data? No, there is no migration of the data warehouse data as it exists today. Will there be a report feature for this, as in will I be able to see what migrated over? There's no plans currently for a report feature. It does keep logs of everything that was migrated over, so you can look at that log. That's what the 6,000 log entries were that I had, and it separates them down into sections. So if you're interested in knowing what was migrated from one to another, you can look at that. So that's really where the reporting aspect of it comes in. You could, of course, parse that log file and create some reports off of it if you desired. If it's something we have a number of customers ask about, then there's a very real chance that we will reach out and start doing that ourselves. Is there a chance to be included in customer level alpha beta testing? Yes, there is a chance. If you're working with a Cireson consultant right now, reach out to your consultant and he should be able to help you out with that and get you into the program possibly. Otherwise, if you're not working with a consultant, just reach out to your salesperson and we can discuss it with them. And we do have a alpha, basically an alpha version, we call it a preview release that you can get a hold of by getting that program, and it's got a time bomb in it, so basically it'll only work for a certain period of time and then blow up. So, and it also doesn't include all the features that will be included in final release, but it does have most of them. So talk to your salesperson, they'll qualify you for that and see if it's something that would make sense for us. And then outside of that, there will be the pre-release version probably within the next month. So what would happen if you were to run it again? Would it recognize the old from the new? Yes. So it would go through and it would recognize that the work item IDs, all the information of the work item is similar or the same, and it would then not copy over those work items. If you're curious about that, I think I already closed it, so I'd have to set all the settings again. But it does work. So basically you can run it again if you run into an error and it won't go through the entire process again, which is great. So it will only copy over the new stuff, which is what I mentioned earlier, in that if you have an environment, you did a migration, you're testing it out and you're waiting to see that everything's good, and then your old environment's still processing new work items, you can then just run it again, work item only, and copy over just the work items and the new work items and not copy all the other work items again, so that you pick up the ones that you might have missed. Is that based on GUID rather than IDs, since the IDs could change? The IDs will change. The GUIDs have to be unique. So new GUIDs are actually created when the work item is submitted. So the GUID actually changes as well. So what we actually look at is a comparison in the work item itself to look at things such as title, description, etc. So I would have to go back to our dev in terms of the exact comparison. But in general, unless you've gone through and changed those existing work items in a significant way, then it shouldn't copy over that same item again. Is there a problem if I migrate the data from production to test, even if the server resources are different from each other? So one thing you have to be aware of there, it just depends on what's different. If you have servers that are different in that environment and you're not using the same set of servers and you don't want the same data, you want this dev data versus the other, then you just have to be careful as to what you are copying over. In that case, you may just copy over work item data or just request and service offering data instead of configuration item data. So you just have to look at what you're actually copying over. You can definitely go from production to test. You can get the vast majority of what you want that you'd want to test against from your production environment into your dev environment. Server names don't matter at all, except in the case of configuration items. So as far as like a service manager server, a management group name, those things don't matter because we're just copying the data directly into the new environment as if it's almost like they're new items, except with all their same created, modified dates, their status, all those things are still being put in there with the same data. So it's actually new items in the new environment, so they should work just fine in the new environment. So there shouldn't be any problem going from production to dev or from dev to production in terms of that work item, configuration item data. Unless those configuration items don't exist in the environment, it'll just be created as a configuration item, which will work fine. It's just it may not meet whatever automation needs or something you have in that particular case. But that's definitely an outlier. We have AD and SCCM connectors set up. How does copying the configuration items over to the new environment impact those? And we'd want to keep the connectors the same. Would we lose work item history, get duplicate CIs? Work item history. So that's a good question. Work item history, I believe it does go away simply because of how it's related. So let's take a look at one of these. So this is all the stuff that was added. So it keeps things like user comments, things like that are all kept. But as far as the actual history of the work item, you can see that it doesn't show when each comment was added and things like that. So it doesn't keep the work item history, but it does keep all the objects that are related to the work item. So the reason for that is work item history is actual text values that are stored separately in the database, and there's no real way to relate that information back and modify it. If it was that easy to modify and change, then it wouldn't be as secure as what they want it to be. As far as if you have AD and CI connectors or configuration manager connectors, a lot of those base information off of the SUID. So as long as the SUID doesn't change, then which we copy the SUID and all that stuff, we copy that stuff over. So by copying that stuff over, it should be able to link that back up. So if I was to copy over a real Active Directory user and my AD connector was then to run after that, it should catch that user and update that user as needed and still continue to work. This is something that we'll be testing, as we go forward. And one of my guys, one of the many, have probably already done it. I would just have to follow up with them to answer that definitively as far as the relationships and the connectors and making sure everything runs. But it's been tested in several different migration scenarios in large environments. That's why it was built originally. So it should be covered. For 2016, there will be no migration required for the Cireson portal. What you see here, which is my portal, actually works just fine. And I'm on 2016. So through that process, it's not a big deal. It actually just requires a management pack update, I think is what they said, and then it should work from there. So there will be no migration tool required to migrate Cireson services. Most of them are just going to be MP updates, things like that. So we already have, I believe we've already released most of the console applications updates. So almost all of our console applications already support Service Manager 2016 up to TP5 since nothing else has been released since then. We're waiting, of course, for RTM for final tests, so you can expect that almost all of our products will be patched and working in 2016 within a week of the final drop of Service Manager. All right, well, we've gone a little bit over our time today, but I appreciate everybody being here on the webinar. I think I answered most of the questions. If you have any additional questions, like I said, let's just reach out to us. Hop on over to our community page, talk to your salesperson. If you're working with a consultant today, just talk to your consultant. We should be able to answer any questions you have. If we don't know the answer ourselves, we know who to talk to get it. And if nobody knows the answer, well, we'll find out for you just by testing it out. So please feel free to email me. You have my contact information from the beginning. Let me go back a few pages here. Here's our webinar resources. The recording will be up on the Team Cireson Vimeo page, and then we also, of course, have the community, and then there's other information around the platform. If you're an existing customer, you can visit us at support.cireson.com for information, and then Cireson's always hiring, looking for the best of the best. So feel free to reach out to us via our careers page. If you have any questions, comments, or any other information you'd like to give us, you can reach us at team@cireson.com. All right, everybody, thank you again for attending today, and I look forward to hearing from each of you in the future. Thanks again.